Once upon a time there was a knight named Austin. He was a member of the Bear Kingdom's Round Table. He was a brave and loyal knight, friend of the king of the bear army, Jacob. One day the peaceful kingdom was having a beautiful banquet, when a villainous schemer came along. He posed as a friend, and he joined with the Knights of the Round Table. He convinced Austin there was but one plan, an evil seen countless times. He went to the king of the bears, with a knife behind his back. Austin said, "Can I have a hug? I'm feeling down." And that's when he attacked. He plunged the knife into the king's back. The bear king was now laying dying. It was a brutal attack. But the gods of the kingdom did so weep that the king's punctured heart should freeze over, and his powers were born. Of course, the villainous acts were not done for naught, for Austin was granted the power of passionate flame, and so he used his fiery, menacing powers to dominate part of the kingdom, bringing about the reign of the fire. The new Ice King Jacob reclaimed half of his kingdom. One kingdom was now two, though, and their word forever altered. A friendship so strong, yet how did it falter? As the war raged on between fire and ice, both kingdoms' powers grew, attracting people anew. People joined both kingdoms, and they seemed all but nice. The kingdoms' mights clashed, and one thing was true. King Austin reigned with fear and might. He attacked the citizens and brought them into the fight. King Jacob ruled with love and care. Watching innocents die was more than he could bear. Austin's attack of neighboring lands forced many to flee. Many went to the Ice Kingdom, and their protection the Ice King guaranteed. A brave knight named Sir Green was among the refugees. He joined the Ice Kingdom and soon became a deputy. Jacob and Sir Green pushed Austin's armies back, protecting the citizens and then going on the attack. Austin now feared, and so he sought a new knight. Kyler was found in Austin's prison to his great delight. Kyler was granted some of Austin's power. In exchange, it was the Ice Kingdom he sought to devour. Kyler went to King Jacob, claiming to be a victim of the king's reign. Jacob believed him and granted him entrance into the ice domain. Overnight, explosions grew throughout the land. Sir Green summoned more snow knights. They were really quite grand. However, the explosions were too much, and they faltered and failed. Kyler then appeared, and with his sword, Mr. Green he impaled. King Jacob was trying to protect the young and the old, but this attack was worse than any story can truly be told. King Jacob saw that Kyler was to blame. He threw an ice spear with perfect aim. Kyler was hit and fell back in pain. He knew it was then he couldn't remain. Kyler ran off screaming, "How I love my work!" Kyler disappeared in the night with a devious smirk. The explosions then started in the kingdom of fire. After a moment, he stopped to admire. He was a traitor and schemer, but to Jacob it would seem like he was an Austin redeemer. King Austin and Jacob were allies once more. A truce was born to find Kylo, and the ward they'd explore. Austin and Jacob did search all around for where Kylo did hide. Jacob scouted ahead and looked on in horror. His knights were hung on spikes, and his people were held in tight confines. He contacted Austin, who quickly arrived, realizing Kylo and him were a lot alike. The two then clashed with Kylo, who quickly fell, but Kylo frowned as he had something to tell. "Allies, how could this be?" he proclaimed as Jacob smiled on. "You shouldn't have attacked the man who set you free." Jacob smiled as he said, "You created a truce between Austin and me." Kylo's face became quite puzzled, but before he could speak, Austin swung his great sword at Jacob, who froze it in place. Jacob then held his hand toward the sea. Austin's fate now looked bleak. A trident emerged, and soon Austin's sword would have to be replaced. However, Austin's hands then lit a fire, and soon an axe did appear. Kylo then used the opportunity to disappear. On his way out, Kylo flipped a lever. The imprisoned citizens then had zombie fever. Jacob held back Austin's onslaught as he used magic to heal the villagers. The fever subsided, ending that ordeal. Austin looked on in rage as the citizens threw rocks. Austin then shot flames where they froze, and they were blocked. This forced Austin to flee. Some citizens then began to chase, but Jacob stopped them and told them to stay in their place. He tended their wounds, and then they went to the sea. Soon they arrived back at the kingdom of ice. King Jacob then saw Austin's forces marching. Jacob then let his powers start charging. A wall of ice was formed, one that nothing could slice. The onslaught was unending. Jacob's powers, however, were not so unbending. Austin's army broke through after weeks of attack. As Jacob's power finally failed at repairing the crack, Jacob was holding the endless force all alone. His true power was shown. He was tired and weak from holding up the great wall, and now that Austin's demons would try and make him fall. However, Jacob held on, putting up a great fight. Austin soon realized that he'd have to bypass Jacob's unending might. Austin's focus then shifted to the children, you see. He rounded them all up, and with that, it was Jacob's defense he was sure to disrupt. Jacob then rushed toward King Austin to save the kids, and with that, Austin revealed the power that he hid. His demons began to possess the kids as they screamed. It was worse than anything Jacob could have dreamed. Jacob wouldn't hurt the kids, so he froze them in place. His magic was running low as Austin laughed. "You disgrace! These kids are mine now. They will kill you, but yet you won't do what must be done." Jacob replied, "You haven't yet won." Austin laughed as one of the kids slashed Jacob across the chest. Austin then took the chance, leaving Jacob no time to rest. His axe flew to Jacob, who summoned his trident, but the army swarmed, and Jacob soon would fall. The story was not over. In fact, it had just begun, for one goddess in particular had another plan. From the clouds above she did watch on for many years. She saw the bear army. She grew attached to the bear's king, as when he fought, it wasn't out of hate or to seek power, but instead for noble goals, like finding justice and saving others from tyranny. So when he lay dying, she was one of the first to shed a tear. But it wasn't until later when she saw her worst fear. The Fire Kingdom was winning. You see, its king corrupted all the knights. Jacob and his people were surviving, though it took all of his might. So the goddess Cheyenne decided she knew what she had to do. Turning herself mortal, this would start the war anew. Her powers were now tied to that of the earth, and she reclaimed some land long forgotten. And with her new earth kingdom she raced in, saving the kingdom of ice. Or did she? Well, that remains to be seen. This is, however, yet another beginning. So many more stories to be told. A goddess departing the heaven created a power that was almost unending. King Austin saw his chance, his own powers he sought to enhance. He used the great void and went to the nether. The gods were becoming angered and annoyed. This is what started the foul weather. The nexus of power flowed into the Fire King, corrupting the land, leading the gods to have an all thing. This was far worse than what Austin did plan. The gods then decided they had to stop him. So they contacted their fallen one, Cheyenne, and so it was done. Austin's light she was told to dim. Cheyenne bid Jacob adieu, and then she left to see her crest through. Cheyenne rushed to the portal, but she was far too late. When she ran in, she sealed her own fate. Austin's powers had grown. He cast a spell to usurp her power. With her magic all drained, her soul he devoured. Now he would go to take the ice throne. When he left the nether, dark pillows did grow. Jacob looked on in awe, but his problems had just begun. Austin was determined to be the only one. It was the lightning he could now throw. The dark bolt of lightning raced toward the Ice King. The bolt pierced his armor, turning it to magma. Jacob couldn't do his thing, as his armor turned into plasma. The pain was intense, as the armor burnt his flesh. The water flowed to him. It was quite the refresh. Jacob summoned a snowstorm that surrounded the land. It was too cold for even his lightning to stand. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Sir Green came in, informing Jacob of another evil force. Kyler was in the kingdom of ice, and truth be told, he was doing something that wasn't quite nice. Jacob had his hands full dealing with the Fire Lord, so Sir Green was sent to stop Kylo, readying his sword. As Sir Green rushed toward the evil schemer, King Jacob realized Cheyenne hadn't returned. This caused Jacob some concern. He decided he had to see her, so he visited a great dreamer. The dreamer spoke to the gods. They said Cheyenne failed while in hell. Her body lay there defeated, laying inside of a stone pod. The portal to hell wasn't accessible from all they could tell. He cast the snowstorm spell and summoned an army. Make sure no one harms these citizens of ice. Then Jacob went to the dark pillar, a nexus of the dark forces, full of light killers. He created ice soldiers. They were reinforcers. The army fought some as he charged on in. It seemed almost impossible that he could win. But the fight continued, and he made it to the top of the spire. He looked on, and he saw the powers that made the situation so dire. He focused his powers and grew a bright light. With this, the darkness was put into quite the fright. This caused Austin to feel pain, so he rushed to the pillar, knowing Jacob was in his domain. However, he was too late. Jacob went through the nexus, On its way through the darkness, it was trying to be infectious. It whispered lies into his ears. It preyed on all of his worst fears as it tried to control. But Jacob fought back. He wouldn't let it corrupt his soul. When he arrived, he quickly found Cheyenne in the pod. It seemed so easy, so he saw through the facade. He said, "Come out, you beast." The beast emerged, saying, "On your soul I will feast." A great battle broke out. There was no water, so Jacob's trident he'd have to be without. However, his powers were great, and with some effort, the nether started to cool. The beast said, "What are you doing, you fool?" The lava froze, and that area changed. Jacob's eyes turned right as he fired a great light. The beast howled in pain as it froze, as its molecules rearranged. Jacob then went to Cheyenne, and then the god's real plan had began. Cheyenne's eyes opened, but she was a demi-deity no more. Austin took it, but now she was connected to his core. She smirked and said, "Let's go fight." Jacob said, "You have no idea of Austin's new might." She then whispered to him her plan, and with that to Austin they ran. When they approached, Cheyenne hid. Jacob summoned his trident and threw it at Austin, who melted it. But Neptune's blessing was now on Jacob's side. A new trident formed, and with that, Jacob it allied. The new trident soared, and with Austin it hit. Austin's eyes filled with rage, and time reversed. This is how it all became undid. Fire Lord Austin was far too powerful. He went on the offensive and gathered his might. Black lightning coursing throughout his body as he created an army of towers. Beams shot from them, each taking Jacob out of the fight. But then Cheyenne appeared and said, "Those powers aren't yours. Your destruction is all you did ensure." Austin fell back in pain as his powers faded. The lightning now cracked and burned as his body degraded. However, Cheyenne felt the pain too as she fell to the ground. Jacob ran over to her, using his powers to heal, and with that, the godly power was unbound. It took a while, but after a bit, the ordeal was over. But Austin escaped, and he was madder than ever. Now he knew he'd have to be more clever. While Jacob was in the nether, saving Cheyenne, Kylo versus Green was soon to get out of hand. So Green found Kylo before the TNT he could plant. When he appeared, Kylo started a big rant. Green wasted no time as he shot from his bow. Kylo's TNT was hit, and it started to blow. Kylo flew back as the explosion hit him. Kylo screamed, "Are you really that dim? There's a war going on, and Austin has me real scared. He attacked me too. I was too unprepared." Sir Green said, "Then why attack us in this time of distress?" Kylo replied, "I'm doing my best. I was setting a trap for when the walls come down. I'd blow up the TNT and send Austin into the ground." Sir Green thought of the innocents who'd be caught in the blast, shook his head and said, "No, that plan shall not last." He charged Kylo with his sword ready to go. Kylo prepared as he shook his head no. The fight was really quite grand, but this time Kylo had nothing planned. After a minute or two, the winner was clear. Kylo was now filled with nothing but fear. Kylo was scared. He pleaded, "A truce I require. I want to be spared." Green accepted the truce for the kingdom of ice, and with that Kylo left with a piece of advice. "Don't break this truce, or I will see your death through." Kylo nodded. "This truth is something I don't want to undo." The dark pillars collapsed, but the corruption remained in the land of the flames. Austin used his citizens as offerings to the darkness. With this, the power of the black flame was all he could harness. The god he allied with was pulling away, despite how he pleaded and gave them power in hopes that they'd stay. He knew the light magic was only becoming stronger. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. So he devised a plan so wicked and mean, it was more nefarious than any that had previously been seen. It all had to take place tomorrow night. As Santa was coming, a being of pure light, he devised a plan of his own making. His love for the season was something he'd be faking. He asked Cheyenne and Jacob to make it all cheery. A Christmas truth, they thought. That made sense in theory. Maybe Austin saw the error in his ways, so a tree was put up that brought feelings of peace and delight. It was truly a beautiful holiday display. Everyone went to bed feeling alright, except for Austin, who started to scheme, as the other two kingdoms lived in their dreams. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the land not a creature was stirring, except for one man. It was Austin, you see, up to some nefarious business. The runes how they hung by the castle in the air, knowing St. Nikolai would soon be there. The others were nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of peace lived in their head. And Austin's hand bled as the runes grew anew. The runes grew dark as St. Nikolai flew. His Santa then fell, and a noise rung aloud. It was then that Santa sung, "Powers that be, protect me!" It was then he was encased in a wonderful tree, as Austin's eyes grew red. It was then he said, "Santa will die, kindness is a lie." Austin then stopped, as a laughter ring. Behind him, you see, was a devastating thing. Krampus had appeared, and with that Austin's heart turned to fear. A chain wrapped around him, and soon he fell. Krampus then threw him into the wall. His life did it quell. The noise of the screams caused quite a stir in the night, awakening King Jacob, who saw the big fight. Jacob rushed towards the Krampus, who entered the tree. The Krampus threw great flames, and this caused Jacob to flee. He called out to Queen Cheyenne, who responded rather routine. Jacob barked out an order, "Go save the Fire King." She then embarked, fighting the evil toy things. It was then that Jacob gathered his strength, summoning an ice shield and a trident from the sea. Krampus laughed, "To what length?" Jacob cut him off and said, "Fight me." Krampus threw his chains. Jacob countered, but still felt the pain. A great fight had begun, light versus dark. Snow golems did spawn. Jacob then made his mark. The golems then merged into a frightening beast. However, this didn't bother Krampus in the least. He snarled, fire burst from the seam. The snow beast fell, and so did Jacob's team. The fight wasn't over. Hope still burnt bright. The chain was thrown once more. This time, Jacob didn't put up a fight. He was then pulled toward the beast. However, his trident did soar. The trident then hit the Krampus. Square in his chest, the beast fell back in pain, and he fled. But still Santa lay dying. Jacob looked on, feeling the powers he was blessed with. He then drew in his magic, as Cheyenne walked in bleeding, in tears. She looked at Jacob and said, "It was worse than I feared." Jacob looked on and replied, "It was truly quite tragic." Jacob's look was apologetic, as his hands began to glow, his magic to shoot into Santa, who laid below. Cheyenne looked at Jacob and sighed. They both know he'd soon have died. Jacob glanced back at her and said, "Protect them, okay?" She shook her head. Was this the only way? Jacob's life then fled from his eyes. Santa then could rise. With Santa's rebirth, light was restored. Cheyenne looked on, and Santa said, "His sacrifice won't be ignored. The Christmas tale has come to an end." But Cheyenne was left with 3 kingdoms to defend. The task was daunting, and war lay in wait. She then looked on, awaiting her tragic fate.